You already know the math. You have known it for years. Pay more than the minimum. Spend less than you earn. Kill the high-interest balance first. None of that is a secret, and you could have written it yourself. So let me ask you the only question that actually matters. If you already know exactly what to do, why is the balance still there? It is still there because debt was never a math problem. It is a behavior problem wearing a math costume. And the people who finally get out are not the ones who found better arithmetic. They are the ones who figured out what the arithmetic was hiding. Here is where we are going. First, I am going to show you the loop, the actual cycle you are standing inside, 5 steps that feed each other and never stop turning on their own. Then I am going to put the math and the mind side by side so you can see exactly where the money is really disappearing. And then 6 shifts. 6 things that are true about debt that nobody says out loud. 1. This is not an income problem, and I can prove it. 2. The math takes 10 minutes and the behavior takes 10 years. 3. Nobody is buying the thing, they are buying the feeling. 4. Your brain treats future you as a total stranger. 5. Shame is the fuel, not the brake. And 6. You cannot budget your way out of a behavior you have never named. Then one thing you can do this week. Let us find your loop. Picture a circle with 5 stops on it. You earn. You spend a little more than you meant to because something came up. Something always comes up. You owe, so the balance ticks up. You feel the stress of owing, and that stress sits on your chest at 2 in the morning. And then, to get out from under that feeling for 20 minutes, you spend again. Earn, spend, owe, stress, spend. That is the debt cycle, and I want you to notice something strange about it. Nowhere on that circle does the word income appear. Nowhere does it say bad at fractions. Every single stop on that loop is a feeling or a decision. This series takes one stop at a time and takes it apart. Today we are looking at the whole circle, so you can see the shape of the thing you are actually standing in. Now put 2 pictures side by side. On the left, the math. Every payoff calculation for every balance you carry, the totals, the rates, the order to pay them in. That side is genuinely solved. You could sit down tonight with a free calculator and have a complete, correct, optimal plan in about 10 minutes. 10 minutes. That side has a green check on it. Now look at the right side. That is the mind, the tangle of habits and stories and 2 in the morning decisions that determines whether you ever run the plan you built in those 10 minutes. That side has been unsolved for 10 years, and here is the whole point of this series. The money does not disappear on the left. Every dollar you have lost to debt disappeared in the gap between those 2 panels. That gap is where the debt actually lives, and almost nobody works on it because everybody is busy rebuilding the spreadsheet. Shift 1. Debt is not an income problem, and I can show you the proof in one picture. Put 2 houses next to each other. The first household earns about $45,000 a year. The second earns about $250,000. Now draw the same red loop over both roofs, because it is there over both of them, at roughly the same rate. That second household is not carrying a small balance. It is carrying a bigger one, on a bigger car, with a bigger payment and a bigger amount of quiet stress. If debt were a math problem caused by not having enough dollars, a 5-fold increase in income would erase it. It does not. It scales it. Almost everyone reading this has watched it happen to someone they know. A raise, a promotion, a real jump in income, and 18 months later the balance is right back where it was or higher. That is the single cleanest piece of evidence that income was never the variable. The dollars got bigger. The pattern did not change. And I want to be careful here, because there is a real and important exception. Some people genuinely do not earn enough to cover the essentials, and no amount of mindset work fixes an income that does not cover rent and food. That is a real crisis, and it deserves real solutions. But that is not most debt. Most debt belongs to people whose income could cover it and somehow never does. And if that is you, More money was never going to be the answer. It has already been tried. Shift 2. The math takes 10 minutes. The behavior takes 10 years. I want you to really sit with how lopsided that is. Everything you would need to know to be out of debt, every technique, every rule of thumb, every payoff order, is free, public, and simple enough to explain to a teenager. There is no hidden formula. There is no gate-kept knowledge. If information were the bottleneck, nobody with an internet connection would be in debt, and yet here we all are. So why does the entire personal finance industry keep selling you more information? Because information is easy to sell and easy to consume, and consuming it feels productive. You watch the video, you feel the little hit of, yes, I am handling this, and that feeling is genuinely pleasant. So pleasant that it can quietly substitute for doing anything at all. I have a name for that. Financial productivity theater. Building the perfect spreadsheet is not paying the debt. Researching the optimal method is not paying the debt. Reorganizing the budget for the 4th time is not paying the debt. These things feel like work because they are work. They are just work on the panel that was never broken. If you have rebuilt your plan 3 times and the balance has not moved, you do not have an information problem. You have never had an information problem. You have a behavior problem. And behavior is a completely different kind of work. Shift 3. Nobody is buying the thing. They are buying the feeling. Think about the last purchase you regretted, the one that went on a card you were trying to pay down. Now, be honest about what was happening in the 10 minutes before it. Were you calmly comparing options and weighing utility? Or were you tired or bored or stressed or lonely or quietly furious about something that had nothing to do with money at all? Almost nobody overspends while feeling great. Overspending is a mood regulation strategy, and it is a genuinely effective one in the short term. That is the uncomfortable part. It works. You feel bad, you buy something, and for about 20 minutes you actually do feel better because you did something. You took an action. You had a small amount of control in a day where you had none. Your brain notices that it worked, files it away, and next time reaches for it faster. That is not stupidity. That is a learning system doing exactly what it evolved to do, and it explains something that a purely mathematical model of debt can never explain. Why the spending gets worse precisely when the stress gets worse. Under a math model, that makes no sense. The worse your situation, the more carefully you should spend. Under a feelings model, it is completely predictable. The stress of owing money is itself a trigger for the behavior that creates more of it. That is why the loop closes on itself. That is why it turns without anyone pushing. And notice what this means for every piece of advice built on the assumption that you are shopping rationally. Just wait 24 hours before you buy only works if the thing you wanted was the object. If what you wanted was to stop feeling something, 24 hours does not remove the feeling. It just moves the purchase to tomorrow. The advice is not wrong exactly. It is aimed at a version of you that was never the one holding the card. Shift 4. Your brain treats future you as a stranger, and it will happily leave that stranger with the bill. This one has a name, present bias. And it is not a character flaw, it is standard equipment in every human head. Here is how it shows up. A reward you can have right now feels vivid and enormous. The same reward 6 months out feels flat and theoretical, which means a cost, 6 months out, the interest, the payment, the consequence, also feels flat and theoretical. So when you swipe, you are not really making a trade between now and later. You are making a trade between a real person who wants something and an abstraction who will deal with it, and you always side with the real person. The evidence for this is everywhere in your own life. It is the reason people who genuinely intend to start next month do not, over and over for years, because next month is populated by that same stranger, and the stranger is remarkably disciplined right up until the moment they become you. What makes this so hard is that willpower does not fix it. You cannot out-discipline a design feature. What actually works is making the future concrete enough that your brain stops treating it as fiction. A specific number, a specific date, a specific thing that changes on that date. Debt is fundamentally a machine for converting future use money into present use relief. It works so well because future you cannot object. Shift 5, and this is the one I most want you to hear. Shame is the fuel, not the brake. Most people assume that feeling bad enough about a balance will eventually force them to deal with it. That shame is the engine of change. It is the exact opposite. Watch what shame actually makes you do. It makes you not open the statement. It makes you not check the total. It makes you scroll past the banking app and tell yourself you will look at it on Sunday. And that avoidance is not a side effect of the problem. It is the mechanism. You cannot pay down a number you refuse to look at, and every week you do not look at it. It grows in the dark and gets scarier to look at, which makes you look at it even less. Shame builds its own feedback loop, and the loop only runs in one direction. It gets worse. And it gets worse in a specific way, because shame says the problem is you, not your behavior, not the mechanism, you. There is no action that fixes it. You cannot do a task that makes you stop being a bad person, so you do nothing. Compare that to plain, unglamorous guilt about a specific behavior. I overspent this month points at a thing you did, and things you did can be done differently. I am irresponsible with money points at who you are and offers nothing to grab. Everything in this series is deliberately built to strip the shame out and leave the mechanism, because the mechanism is the only part you can actually work on. Shift 6. You cannot budget your way out of a behavior you have never named. A budget is a plan for a rational person spending money on purpose. That is a fine thing to have, but look at where your money is actually going wrong, and you will find it is almost never the planned spending. It is the spending that happens in a mood on a Tuesday night in about 90 seconds. No budget contains a line item for the way I spend when I am overwhelmed, and that is precisely the line that breaks the budget. So the budget fails, and this is the important part, you conclude that you failed. You did not. Your tool was aimed at the wrong target. This is why so many people build a perfect budget in January and abandon it in March, then spend the rest of the year believing they lack discipline, when what they actually lacked was a name for the thing that kept overriding it. Naming is not a soft, feel-good step. It is a mechanical one. An unnamed behavior is invisible, which means it runs automatically, and you experience the result as bad luck. A named behavior is a thing with a trigger, a shape, and a moment. I spend when I feel out of control. I spend to feel generous. I spend when the week has been long. The moment you can say that sentence, you can put something in the gap between the trigger and the swipe. That is the entire difference between white-knuckling and actually changing, and it is where the rest of this series lives. So what do you actually do with this week? One thing. Look at the number. Not a plan, not a spreadsheet, not a new app. Just open the statements and write down what you actually owe, all of it, on one piece of paper. Then sit and look at it for 60 seconds without doing anything about it and without saying a single unkind thing to yourself about it. That is the whole exercise, and I know exactly how it sounds. It sounds like nothing. It is the hardest thing in this video, and most people watching will not do it. And now that you know shame runs on avoidance, you know precisely why. Looking at it is the move that breaks the loop, because the loop needs you not to look. Then, once the number is on paper, add one line underneath. What were you feeling the last 3 times you spent money you had decided not to spend? Do not judge the answer, just write it. You are not building a budget here. You are building the one thing a budget cannot give you, which is a name for the pattern. Get the number out of the dark and get the trigger onto paper, and you have already done more than another month of research would have done. Everything else in this series builds on those 2 lines. So tell me in the comments, which stop on that loop is the one that gets you? Is it the spending, the owing, or that 2 in the morning stress? Whichever one it is, I promise you it has a mechanism, and mechanisms can be taken apart. This is education, not financial, credit, or legal advice. Just an honest look at how this actually works. Next time we go back further than any of this. The money rules you were handed before you were old enough to argue with them. The ones you are still running today without ever having agreed to a single one. If you have ever wondered why you spend the way you do, that answer was installed a long time ago. I will see you there.